All right, bro. Let's refresh what we were just talking about because we started talking, but it was like we might as well just record. So start
Yeah.
fresh, but let's get back into it.
All right. So I'm paraphrasing here, but so there's been this discourse on TikTok last couple of days, right? And one gentleman, level out his content, Deontay Kyle from Grits and Next podcast. And again, I'm paraphrasing here. Was talking about the perception of women towards men, right? And that sometimes women don't feel safe, and blah blah blah, and that other men are responsible for that. The fact that women don't feel safe, like in general, right? And I think I'm following what he's saying, kind of, in the context of even though you may not personally be responsible for that, or I wouldn't feel that way. It's like you're still not personally responsible, but you still are responsible because women do feel this way for a reason. There are bad men out there. There are dangerous men out there. There are all these things out there. And I was following him, and I was like, the only thing I didn't kind of like, I followed that logic, but then he was like, he used like a racial thing. It was like, I don't have time to worry about which white people are not racist or not. I have to go off the the actions and the history of the group as a whole. And I was following you until that point because I was like, because in that logic can be flipped both ways. Again, you can take that logic and use it towards, black men or black women or Hispanic men, Hispanic women. You can kind of use that positively or negatively. And I kind of see what I see what you're trying to say. Although it's not, it's not a personal attack amongst men. It's like there is a reason, per se, that women feel these ways, even though it may not necessarily be the majority. It's almost like guilty until proven innocent. Like you kind of have to prove that you're not a bad man. You know what I mean?
You have to prove that you're not a bad man.
Not a bad man because there are these outliers. There are these, and I'm like, I see what you're trying. I see the logic. I see where you're trying to go at that. I was like, but I still think that is a little slippery of a slope. But then again, so the second half of that was another gentleman on TikTok. His name's John Can. He said that take that the other gentleman had was pandering. He said because we all know as adults that yes, bad things can happen anywhere at any time to anyone. He's like, but there are places where these things are more likely to happen and to occur. So we try not to put ourselves in these situations where we know that these things are more likely to happen than others. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that too, by any means.
Well, how do you want to approach that? It's almost too many options for me to go through, but
you know what I mean. But I'm a little bit more.
Let's piece it down one at a time. Are men responsible for other men's behavior?
Okay.
Am I responsible for you? Well, see, but hold on. Time out. Are men who are strangers, meaning I have no affiliate, I don't know them, we're in a public setting, I have no idea who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Am I then responsible for that individual's behavior? The reason I changed it is you and I are well, you're my best friend. I've known you for a very long time. We've gotten into a lot of shit and we've done a lot of shit and we've called each other on our shit. I still wouldn't say that I'm responsible for your actions, but if I don't at least challenge you or question you on, say it vice versa, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
Then we're not friends. So let's set that aside because I think in that sense, that's a little cloudy because you're my boy and that's a little different, but complete strangers acting a fool. I see that. What's happening? What's my obligation? Strangers now, not your boy, strangers.
It's not even that slippery slope, right? But it's like, I think, right? So and again, we've talked about this before. I was like, my responsibility is to my close-knit tight circle first, and then a little further, since I love further.
Co-workers, things like that.
Things like that, right? A stranger, like on a, that's like, again, obviously everything has context, right? But if you're on a subway train and there's four dudes, about to jump this old lady, it's like, should you say something? Should you say that? Be like, but at what point are you putting yourself in imminent danger for the sake of such stranger or whatever, right?
Sorry, finish your thought because I have a response to that.
I'm thinking like yes and no. Like, are you capable of stepping in? Are you capable of? And I think some of this stuff is now. I think what he was saying was not. Again, this is just the way that I took it. I didn't take it as he was saying I'm directly responsible for your actions. He's like, but at the same time, it's like, even though I am part of said group, right? I am bearing some of the responsibility for the bad actions of others that people have done over time, even though I have nothing to do with that. So it's like you're responsible and maybe responsible wasn't necessarily the best choice of words at that moment. But like I said, the way I took it was, man, even though I don't know this person, I'm not like, some random lady on the street. It's like, oh, I'm afraid of you. I was like, man, I don't know you. I've never seen you before. Like, you don't know anything about me. I was like, as a matter of fact, I was like, you probably want me on your fucking side. You really would want me on your side, just, in general. I was like, but the fact that you've had bad experiences over time with other men, whatever, in your lifetime, it's like, I'm still, for whatever reason, bearing the weight of that, even though I have nothing to do with it. I think that's what he meant. Or at least put it this way. That's the way that I took it. Not that I'm personally responsible for every other man's actions in the world.
So what I'll say is this, my thoughts, what I have found. For the most part, and seeing this is the other problem, I'll just speak in generalities. For the most part, women want a good man that is capable of doing bad things. Meaning a female wants a man that if she is the fan, she can look and know that he's not only is he capable of handling himself, but that he also will.
Yes.
That has been undermined by a lot of negativity towards men, toxic masculinity. You have whole segments of women that love the bad boy for numerous reasons. I mean, we talked about it when we were patrolling together. There's plenty of young females that were trying to find men to get them pregnant so they could max out their benefits. And they knew they weren't going to stick around and be a dad because they didn't want them around and would probably end up dead or in jail. So you're kind of propping up the bad behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked about it on the show. I don't know if this one or Street Tales. In football, there was two of my teammates that had like over 10 kids. I think the one had 16 kids, bro. He was 19 years old. Like, well, what are we doing? You're advocating for bad behavior. Yeah. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't have a lot of kids if you could, but see, this is what I'm saying. It's kind of a cyclical thing, and it's being, you got to talk in generalities, and people don't like that. And so, in the one point, what I would say is we overbroaden, and I really hate I have to go off the collective actions of this group, whether it be culturally, racially, socioeconomically, because that's another thing, right? Poor people are terrible parents. That's not true. That's not true at all. Wealthy people are great parents. That's not true. I've seen some fucked up kids and I've seen some fucked up parents that are ungodly wealthy. So you see what I'm saying? Like you can't just do that. And I think it goes back to what we talked about in the last one. There's no shame. This fucking United States, culturally has no fucking shame. They are shocked when there's any type of consequences for their actions. And then we don't reward good action. And I'll bring up, seeing this is where it gets hard. I'll bring up Daniel Penning. Mm-hmm. Became a racial thing. Mm-hmm. He is literally talking about what you're talking about. A man was screaming and threatening everybody on the bus, including women and children. He was capable and competent. Engaged the guy. I don't think his intent was to kill him, but the guy died. And it immediately became a racial thing, not a look at these actions. He was trying to do what anyone who's grown up with a strong male role model, they would say you have to protect those that are weaker than you if you are capable of doing so. Immediately nationwide story, like who wants to react that way? And then not to touch on it again, the George Floyd thing. Again, I don't think that his intent was to kill him. He was trying to control a situation that might have been beyond his scope of training and cognitive ability, sure, but it immediately led to a racial thing, and cops all across the country said, whoop, and they all pulled back. They said, fuck that. I ain't doing shit. You see what I'm saying? So it's like these actions, these things have led to where we are now. And then it blows my mind to see like the feminist movement has also been hijacked, right? Mm-hmm. And I understand, and I get the concept, but it's been hijacked to the point where it's like men aren't allowed to be cordial. They're not allowed to be gentlemen because that's, you're asserting your masculinity, all these things that I've heard. And then you'll find another section of women who are like, yeah, men don't hold the door for me no more. Why do I got to pay on the first date? Like, see what I'm saying? Like, it's just, you're bombarded with this shit constantly. So men are like, fuck it. I'm just going to do whatever the fuck. I'm just going to be who I am and fuck everybody else. And it's led to an individualism more so than a collective, hey man, like as a group of men, yo man, that's fucked up. You shouldn't do that. Man, who the fuck? You see what I'm saying? Like, that's not a thing anymore. Hopefully, I summarized that well. Otherwise, I'm going to get shredded. What I'm trying to say is there's good and bad in all the things you're saying, but it's the reaction of the public, and especially when these things hit nationwide. It's like, if it's fucked up, then we should call it fucked up. But if it's like any reasonable human can look at that and say, hey, that wasn't the dude's intent or the female's intent. Like, let's use some reason, but fuck that. If it doesn't fit in a hashtag, we're out.
Yeah, I mean, again, I know your intent was not to offend or.
I'm sure I did though.
The beliefs to the side, but see, and that's the thing. It's like a lot of these things are very generalized and very sensationalized, and when they get to be that way, I tend to not necessarily draw myself back, but kind of just like pull back a little bit and like look and like a lot of these things are not happening to me in my personal everyday day-to-day life and interactions. Like, it's just not. And I don't like a lot of these things that are happening. Is like it doesn't stop me from being a gentleman. It doesn't stop me from caring about people or trying to look out for people or do what I perceive to be right in the moral thing. Like, and I think it's I've actually had this conversation with groups of friends, especially like some of the female friends within some of these friend groups, and they're like you know what, we we like when we go hang out and that you come with us because we know at least someone is like paying attention, is like kind of like watching over the group, and like someone's capable here of whatever, like when everyone's, and I'm like, to the point where like they don't always think I'm having a good time. They're like, are you even having a good time? Because like they're like, I see you kind of like Overwatch of the group. Are you having fun? I'm like, yes, to an extent. I was like, yeah, but somebody's got to be paying attention. So someone has to be watching over us and making sure shit's good or whatever. So I do pull out chairs, open doors, favorite things or whatever. Even that doesn't even have to necessarily be romantically. It's just like I feel as a man. I know we talked about this. I was like, I'm responsible for the people who are around me within that bubble. I was like, I'm responsible. Like put this way, me being who I am. If something happens to you while you're with me, they're going to look at me and be like, why didn't you do something? Why didn't you whatever? So I'm like, I personally take that seriously. I think it seriously in the sense of like that says a lot about who I am and what I'm capable of doing. That you look to me to be responsible for your safety and for your well-being.
I'm going to tell you, I don't know if I've ever talked to you about this. Obviously, we're both capable in our own rights. Not that I'm advocating that. I don't want anybody to try me. I'm an old man now, but anywho, my kids used to talk about it when you would come visit or whatever. And, because I traveled a lot. So when dad was home, they slept better at night. They felt it just subconsciously. And they said, and then when Uncle BJ was there, they were like, they had no care in the world. They felt like no matter what's going on, dad is here, Uncle BJ is here, like their level of, and again, they didn't even realize they were feeling it until they were older. They're like, it's amazing. Like you didn't do anything, you didn't say anything, but just you being there and then Uncle BJ being there, it's like a sense of like security and peace was just and they just felt comfortable. They're like, we're good no matter what goes on.
Yeah.
So it's a real thing, and this, at some point we should get into a spiritual side of it, but it's a real thing, man. Anyway.
No, it's and I can't remember, as a matter of fact, I love this term. It was from the same gentleman that we started the podcast off. It was Deontay Carl said this. He's like, and again, he was talking about this in a completely different context of like the civil rights movement and all that kind of stuff. I was like, but I love the quote, and I kind of took it to heart. He's like, you don't have to be harmful, but don't be harmless. Like,
Jordan Peterson says that too. Jordan Peterson says that.
It's like, like I think it was, I don't know if it was Rogan. I think I heard this on Rogan, but it's like, it's better to be like a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you don't have to be mean or overbearing or whatever. I was like, I actually prefer to be to myself, to be silent, to be, the way I'm very back up first. What I was like, but at the same time, capable and willing to commit, very, very strong acts of violence. I was like, but at the same time, I was like that, but see, being capable and willing to do that is what makes me a little bit more reserved and calm and whatever. I was like, listen, I don't want it to get to this point. I really don't. I don't want it to get there. That's why I'm saying I don't want it to get there, because I know the levels I'm willing to take it to.
Yeah.
So yeah, before we get there, it's not even, I'm telling you, it's not a macho thing. It's not a, I don't want that. I really want everybody to be peaceful and kind of coexist and because I would really love, that is my ideal thing, just to be peaceful. Everybody go about your way. Hey, wave at my neighbors. Hey, how you doing? Do you need anything? Can I get you something? Can I do something for you? Is my typical day-to-day nature. I was like, but, mess with something that's in that bubble. Mm, yeah, that's a completely different person, a completely different side.
Yeah. Well, let me touch on this because I know we set it aside, the racial aspect. And I've been, because it's so pervasive in it's always there. And it's really frustrating. And let me just phrase it this way. Africa, it has been segmented, the different countries, the tribes, all that. And I think we talked about this before, like Gaddafi and some of the other ones that were trying to solidify Africa. Like imagine Africa like the United States, where they all worked together. They had free flowing commerce. They had control of their natural resources. I mean, the precious stones, the gold. I mean, the natural resources in Africa they support the rest of the global economy, right? And yet within Africa, some of those countries and stuff are the poorest, most downtrodden, beaten groups of individuals anywhere in the world, right? And there's several countries and there's a lot of global influence that has an interest in keeping it that way because Africa could be a fucking powerhouse, just the natural resources alone. But they keep them separated in, people in Congo, they're worse than the people in Kenya. We should fight and kill, whatever it is, whatever the tribal stuff is, right? It's kind of the same thing going on in America. They have to keep fucking white dudes, fucking black dudes, and fucking Hispanic dudes. Could you imagine if everyone just said, that's all stupid. We're American, men, women, whatever. We're here to work cohesively. If we didn't have this constant bubble of racial tension, always trying to separate every aspect and guarding and, overseeing every, you have to do this whole preamble to be like, I'm not racist and I respect the environment and whatever it is. It stymies actual growth and cohesion. And it's been a pervasive, constant thing for 50 years, maybe. And it's like, well, how can you forget what happened? It's like, I'm not forgetting. It's like, at some point, could you imagine the power if we all just worked together? We didn't have to keep doing this fucking preamble every time we had a conversation, that we could just do our job or do this thing called, growing a country. You know what I mean? How much money, time, energy, and lives have been wasted on this concept?
Yeah, I can imagine it. I can 100% imagine it, 100% see it. It's when you look at it at a macro level, it doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense. It's like
it's a distraction.
It's like why are we doing this? Why are we, I'm like, and it's like, but it's one of those things. It's like you can't. Obviously you can't. It's like, I don't personally get tied up into a lot of the day-to-day things, and I'm like, you know what? As the great philosopher OJ the Juice Man says, I'm getting money. I know people hate me because we have that philosophy. I'm like, I know there's people that don't like me for whatever reason, but it's also not going to stop me from doing the best I can do day to day. And that's not that stop me from like, just because you hate me don't mean I have to hate, right?
Yeah.
I was like, but at the same time, I think it's like, you can dislike me all you want as long as you're not harming me or like bothering me. You know what I mean? Like bothering me, and I think that's where. And again, I don't even like to make it like a racial thing, but like this, us as a society kind of feeds into like the psyop and like the propaganda of like, this is bad over here and they're bad over there and this is bad over here. You should feel. I'm like, bro, I like out of all the propaganda that's happening, and I'll take it back to the law enforcement thing, right? And be like, oh, cops are bad. I'm like, okay, okay, I can't say yes or no to that. I can only give an account for myself personally in the interactions that I've had personally with the community while doing my job. Like, but I always, as we're about to ask, I was like, have you ever personally had a negative interaction? You're like, well, no. I'm like, okay, well, what makes you feel so passionate about that specifically that would make you kind of like, stake your claim on the hill, about that? Well, just the things that I've seen. I'm like, okay, well, have you seen it or have you experienced it? And I'm like, well, I'm like, again, a lot of these things go both ways. And I'm like, I haven't personally seen or dealt with a lot of these things. I don't think that, I try to preface this all the time and say it's like, it's almost like, even in like dating or like, even just like some of the different friend groups that I have. It's like, I've had bad experiences sometimes in dating this type of, or whatever. And like, some of it's like, it's because I didn't pick well. It was like, not necessarily it was my fault or the other person's fault. It's like, but I did not vet certain things properly in order to elicit the outcome that I wanted or the response that I desired. And even the friends, it's like, oh, well, especially, this is, obviously right after 9/11, right? It's like, all Muslims are bad. That's the propaganda of that specific time, right? I'm like, I like 10 Muslim friends. Like, never bothered me. Never been an issue with me. Never had a problem. So it's like a lot of it is like you said, a lot of it is like incentivized propaganda to kind of like keep us divided. And I just personally just don't buy into it. At the same time, it's like the system is only as good as if we buy into it, right? If we all got up tomorrow and said we're not gonna pay taxes tomorrow, what the fuck are they gonna do? I was like, perfect example. I was like, the way the traffic works, the traffic symbols work in the country, it only works if we all agree to follow it. If we all agree to it, that's the only way it works.
Correct.
I was like, tomorrow it's like, you know what? I'm driving on left hand side of that road. Everything goes to shit. I was like, oh, guys, why are we not seeing this part? I was like, we could literally be like, we all don't collectively don't want to do this. Do something different. I mean, but that's also the oversimplification of said issue.
Well, and it's just like, when you see a cop do something real fucked up and bad, all the good cops, thousands, the majority all go, God damn it. You know what I mean? It's like, fuck. They hate it.
Yep.
And just like, like what you're talking about, Muslim friends, and they saw that, they're like, that's not that's not representative of the mass, of how we, you see what I'm saying? Like, it's always a small subsect, and then all of a sudden we have to go, oh, that must be how all of them are. And it's like, no, dude, it's very frustrating. It's well, you know what? It ties into the next point, the education stuff. But if you want to round out that thought, I want to jump into that, because this ties into the laziness that is.
Jump into it, bro. I think that's crazy, but go ahead.
Yeah. So San Francisco just rolled out their school board, their school district. They're not going to count absences. That's not going to count against you to graduate. You can take tests as many times as you need in order to pass. An 80 will get you an A. A 21, meaning out of 100 questions, you get 21. That's a passing grade. You get a D. You're going to pass. And they've done away with homework. Now, the homework part, I'm like, I don't know. I kind of agree with that, but that's a side note. But it's like you are not preparing people for their actual real world. And no job, if I do 21% of what you asked me to do, am I going to continue to be employed? Depending on where you live. And so you're setting up the next generation to, one, not be educated. I also saw another story. I need to dig into it, but a young woman got into college and is suing her high school because she didn't realize she was illiterate. She doesn't know how to read. And she passed high school and got in college, but she doesn't know how to read. How the fuck does that happen? So this coddling behavior is fucking asinine. And it's under the guise of, we're trying to help these, it's typically low income minority school districts. Well, they can't control how often they come to school. They might have outside influences. They're trying their best. And, we shouldn't look at the behavior of the student. They're coddling in a way that's like, no, you're keeping them down and you're trying to do it with a nice face. Yeah, we're helping them. You're helping them by letting them go through life not knowing how to read, have actual conversation, not be able to think for themselves. And you're basically creating a generation of people who are going to be solely dependent on, the government to sustain their life.
I was like, my thought earlier, as we're talking about this and bringing this up, I was like, I wonder how many of these things, these issues that we have as a country, right, and specifically this one, seems to stand out, the undertones of it seem to stand out a little bit more. And I'm like, how much of this is by design? Like,
I think all of it. But hold on, Go ahead.
It's like, why would we, clearly this is not the way the world works. And it's like, okay, if we're doing this and we're letting this slide, we're letting this kind of go in this direction, what is the point? I was like, we're not necessarily helping people. It's like, I don't understand. It's almost like, I know there's something here as to why we're doing this and letting this happen. I was like, okay, I can't really figure it out though, but there's something there.
This is what prompted initially me to look this up, and I just Googled it. The Augusta Falls Savage Institute of Visual Arts, a Baltimore City high school, was known for having a 0.13 GPA for their students. That was the average GPA for the students. This was highlighted in a story where a student's grades were changed and he was promoted through levels even though he failed most classes. The school also faced scrutiny for inflating enrollment and changing grades, leading to a scandal. How are you helping these students? The average GPA of the entire high school was 0.13, not a 1.3, just to keep it on, everyone understands, a 1.0 is an F or D or whatever the fuck. A 4.0 is like straight A student. 0.13, I'm sorry, 0.13.
I don't even know how you get that.
I don't even know. You got a D in one class out of 4 years.
Yeah, lower stereotypes.
How is this helping? How is this helping anyone? Now, I have a lot of issues with public education as a whole, period, because you have to teach to the average. You can't teach the low or the high. And I have nothing but empathy and my heart goes out to people who listen. We're all born different, bro. Some people can get shit really easy and God bless them. Some people have to study their fucking ass off just to get a C or a B. God help you if you fall into a category where you just weren't born with that ability. You're not less than. You shouldn't be alive. It doesn't mean you can't be successful, but you should be. They should cater in the sense that they need they need extra, they need help.
Yeah, and I think sometimes some people just don't have an aptitude for public education the way that it's designed. Like a lot of it is like what standardized testing. I'm like, that's how we're deciding if.
But see, I've always had an issue with standardized testing, but now you're telling me that you're graduating people that can't read and a 21 is passing, and then they're going out into the world outside that school district and they're saying, oh yeah, this guy had a 3.8 GPA, but he can't read. How the fuck did that happen? So a standardized test in that sense would be helpful. So I'd be like, no, he didn't. But to your point, when you're like, hey, collectively, if we all just said, no, fuck this, we're not doing it anymore. A bunch of Harvard was kind of one of the preeminent schools. He said, we don't care about SAT scores anymore. And a bunch of schools followed suit. They said, oh, you know what? Fuck it. Yeah, we don't either.
I'm like, it's
but that was the collective thing. And now it's just nobody cares.
I'm like this, like I said, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't do anything. Right. And in terms of education, right. And we'll take it back to something that we can both speak to, our experience. Right? Testing and being a good supervisor.
Yeah.
Or having an aptitude for leadership, like leadership, or having an aptitude to be good at something, right?
Yeah.
It's like, there's plenty of people who we all know, like, hundreds and 95s and 90s on tests or whatever. It's like, but they don't have good people skills. They're not good leaders. I wouldn't trust a person to lead me out of a wet paper bag. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So when we're talking about like education wise, I was like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, like the basics, like, yes, everybody should know how to read, and communicate, read and write, they need to know how to do, physics on a quantum scale. No, right? Like, but you should be able to be competent to be able to know what an inch is, or, 3/5, or measuring cup, or, how to bake something, how to build something, how to read how to make sure your finances, someone's taking advantage of you. Whatever, like, yes, we should all have a level of collective education, right? Because I think it pushes us forward as a species. But some kids are good in school, like that's all they're good at. I'm like, yeah, bro, I don't. It's like I don't read good. I was like, yeah, but you're like, yeah, but that same kid can also would be a wonderful engineer, because they get to see I could build you a deck in 5 hours, because they have a mind that works in a different way. Wonderful engineer, not good at writing a fucking novel, or how to, break down a fucking Harry Potter book. You know what I mean?
And I know specifically my experience living in Maine, there's plenty of guys who I don't even know, some of them might not even finish high school, to be honest with you, but can build a house, lay concrete, run plumbing, electrical. I don't know how to do that shit.
Exactly. But again, I've kind of come in, especially within the last few years, right, of what actually makes something valuable, or what actually makes you, I don't want to say valuable, everybody's valuable as a human being. Let me back up, right? What skills or what things actually have value, there we go, have value within society, as opposed to, it's like, oh, okay, well, matter of fact, I know we talked about this, right? Because we're talking about going back and getting our doctorate. I'm like, and the more I thought about it, I was like, for what? Like, for what? Just some motherfuckers can call me doctor? I was like, it's not.
I have an issue with that anyway. Unless you're a medical doctor and you're going to save my life, you shouldn't be called doctor. I respect your PhD. I respect all that. I get it, but you're not a fucking doctor. Yeah. Stop it. Stop it right now.
But that's what I mean, right? It's like, yes, yes, okay, I'm a doctor of criminal justice. Like, what does that do? What value does it have in society? Because I took a little bit of extra time to read more and write some more papers.
The only benefit it has is that you need one in order to teach the next generation that's getting a criminal justice degree, which that's a different topic. And maybe we can expound on that, because you don't even need a criminal justice degree to be a cop, which I think is actually a shame, because I was not. I was a business major undergrad, and then I got my master's in criminal justice. And while I am happy I did it, I learned a lot. I learned about law enforcement in a way that I had never thought about it before. I didn't realize the history of it, the concept. Like I learned a lot. But let's say I got my doctorate in criminal justice and I said, I don't want to do this. I'm going to go run a business or something like that. It has no value. None.
Zero.
Whereas if I got, an engineering degree and decided to be in law enforcement, I could fall back on that if this didn't work out. Right. And let me explain this. Being a cop is not easy. It's not for everybody. I know we kind of laugh and joke about people who fail out or say, hey, this isn't for me. I did when I was younger. I don't now. I said, good for you, because God help you if you just, for whatever reason, knew this wasn't for you and you did it anyway. You could either, one, end up dead, or in my opinion, worse, getting your partner or somebody else killed because this is not for you and you failed to act. And then because of that, your partner or somebody else or fucking a civilian or a child was killed because you wouldn't act. So my thought process on that has changed. Now, let me just throw this out there. And I did learn this when I would travel. Germany, and I think it's Germany, and I think Israel does it too, but there's some other Eastern European countries. Around middle school age, so going into high school, you get standardized tests, you get this testing thing. For those that are more academically higher up, meaning they show a propensity for academics, they kind of go the traditional high school, college route. For those that are like, yo, this shit, Mr. BJ, your son or daughter, this is not their path. But they don't look down on them. They have a trade school portion where they learn a trade, plumbing, electrical, construction. And this is the other thing. I really hate the fact that people think of this as less than. One, you fucking need it because you're living in something that somebody built for you. Two, some of these dudes make fucking bank. You can come out of high school with an electrical, plumbing, HVAC, whatever, and you're making six figures with no college debt. But it's like this concept is like, oh, you don't have a college degree? Why? That's fucking insane.
I don't know.
And I'm one of those. I got a college degree because I felt like I needed it. And then my parents were like, you got to get one. I mean, I did it. And I guess I'm not going to regret it at this point. I mean, Jesus, fuck. I kind of wish it wasn't even a thought in my brain there was any other option.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But that's what I was saying earlier. It's like,
but they're looked down upon still.
And I don't know why.
And I don't know why. I don't know why.
A lot of blue collar stuff is looked down upon, right? Because
until your fucking house floods and you're like, oh, thank God. And then you're like, yo, how much? $500 an hour. Damn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What's up? What's up, Playboy? Give me that money.
Exactly. So that's one of the things where I've been looking more so, especially the last few years, of like what's actually valuable in society, right? It's like, do you know what do you know how to do? Not what do you know? Dude,
farming is another one. We as a collective have run those fuckers to the ground. So now it's like all industrial shit. And we wonder why we're sick, obese, cancer, diabetes. I don't know. I'm just saying shit. I don't know all the science, but I watch Joe Rogan and I watch the news too. So all this shit being pumped into our food because it's a cost thing. And guess what's the new up and coming thing? Restorative agriculture, people who can grow, hey, look, I'm growing this crop this year. Next year, I'm not. So you're not going to have that. You're not going to have your soybeans and shit. You're going to have wheat. And guess what? After that, I'm not growing wheat. I'm going to grow whatever, right? They're with no chemicals, organic. Organic is the new thing, right? And so like that, the fact that we have to differentiate between organic and not, 50 years ago, it was all fucking organic. Somebody grew it and put it on a goddamn plate.
Well, it's always talking about that specifically. I was talking to my parents the other day, and we're talking about just like some of the history of the family and like how some of the older people in the family, like my great aunt, they used to call her like old Indian, right? She was like, she ended up passing away at like 7 and 8, something like that. And they were talking about like all the shit she used to eat, and like she would smoke like a cigar. But I'm thinking about like, I was like all these things over like how people from like grew up, were born in like the 1900s, the early 1900s, like between 1900 and like 1930, how they lived this very, very long time, and now people are dying at like 40 of like fucking heart attacks. And like I was like, I don't know what it should be all to food, right? I was like, but like some people are like, oh, for example, like my grandfather smoked for 50 years. And he didn't hear from fucking like from lung shit. I was like, yeah, because they weren't smoking. Was actually smoking actual tobacco that came from the fucking ground. He was smoking tobacco. There wasn't like arsenic in this shit. It wasn't filled with this. It wasn't. Yeah, so that's what my great aunt would like, so would smoke, or like she had all these all these ointments and stuff, but they were all like natural. They were all like like even people who, like I said, like my grandfather smoked like pipes, like old fucking whatever, Santa Claus looking. That's one of the few things I do remember from that time. So I remember he had this fucking and but he would actually like take like the tobacco and like stuff it himself. It was all it was tobacco. It wasn't like like it wasn't
Nothing else.
all it was. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, that's yes, when it comes to, like the natural shit, like food and whatever, I'm like, I've been leaning more into like, okay, what can you actually do? Like if all this technological shit breaks down, right? What is actually here? What can you actually live out? What can you actually do? You should you should know how to build shit. You should know be able to kill shit, how to shoot, how to clean it, how to grow your own food, how to take care of yourself. I think there's some things that, we should be able to all do. And I think especially down here, which is crazy, which the hurricane stuff, when shit was, shit blowing all over the place. And I'm like, there's people I ran across who didn't know how to use a chainsaw. And I'm like, you never use a chainsaw? You know how to use a chainsaw? You don't know how to cut something down or or do whatever? I'm like, oh, okay. Like people like small shit, right? People don't even cut their own grass. I'm like, you don't know how to cut your grass? You don't know how to do anything? You never thought to figure it out or whatever? I'm like, no, I'll just get somebody else to do it. Okay, well, okay.
Yeah. No, fair enough. I think in the essence of time, brother, we'll save the other two topics for the next one because I do want to dig into it and I don't want to cut it short. Yeah, bro. It was good checking in with you, bro. You got to work today?
Yeah. All right, bro.
Hit me later.